Now, this is not a joke. Some of you may find it funny, but it's a true story. Now, Britain back in the 50s was not exactly a gourmet's paradise. Things have changed quite a bit in the meantime, but in those days people used to eat food purely because it was the only known antidote to starvation, a sort of gastronomic anthracite, if you will. And the very worst food was served at British boarding schools: stringy meat, overcooked cabbage, undercooked potatoes. The puddings were even worse, often covered in a stinking yellow gunk masquerading as custard. But the very worst pudding by a long way was called tapioca, or as we called it, frog spawn. I couldn't eat it. The rules of the school dictated that no plate could be removed from the table while food was still upon it. And usually other little boys would be happy to eat your pudding as well as their own, but not on tapioca days. And if the master on duty was in a bad mood, and they usually were on tapioca days, then one was forced to sit at table until the food had been finished. Usually the master, after a couple of hours of looking at his watch, would depart in a bad mood, dishing out a detention in lieu of food poisoning. Now, I never found tapioca on the menu of any restaurant or dinner party I attended ever since I left school. But about 20 years after my liberation from boarding school, I was travelling on business in Malaysia with a colleague. We hired a car one weekend and drove out into the countryside. After a while, my nose detected a rather unpleasant and slightly familiar smell, and as we rounded the bend, we noticed the source of this stench. It was a factory, a small factory, with ghastly yellow smoke billowing from the chimneys and the windows. And sure enough, the sign announced that it was in fact the Yang Sang Tapioca Factory in Chinese, English and Malay. I said to my friend, I've got to have a look at this place. So we pulled up at the entrance, and a Chinese gentleman in a white shirt came out, and a white coat, and he said, "Look, can I help you, gentlemen?" I said, "Yes, could we have a look around your tapioca factory, please?" He said, "Yeah, we don't get many tourists, but you're welcome, come on inside." So in we went, and there were these bubbling vats of this awful tapioca. After a while he said, "May I ask why you're so interested in seeing a tapioca factory?" So I said, yes, purely because we had to eat this stuff at school." He said, "What? You had to eat it?" I said, yes. He translated my words to the gathering crowd of his colleagues, and they all started laughing. In fact, they continued laughing for some considerable time. Eventually, our host dried his eyes and said, "You cannot eat tapioca. It is inedible. We use it to build houses with."